Welcome to the season finale edition for football of State Champs Indiana Extra Point. It's presented by Lawrence Analogical University. Lawrence Tech wants you to recruit yourself. Just go to LTUathletics.com and click on the Recruit Yourself link. Academic and athletic scholarships are available in over 24 varsity sports, including football. We have 6 state championship games to recap. My name is Greg Rakestraw. I was fortunate enough to be on the call of the 4A and 5A state championship games on the IHSAA Champions Network. My buddy Bob Stambazze, who has joined us every week on this program for the last 2 years, joins us again. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Just peaches and cream, ready to go to talk about this exciting weekend of football, the great state of Indiana. How cool was that, though? Great crowds down there. People were able to come in and spend the day. It's Indiana football.
The neutral fan was back. Fans sitting in the end zone was back. We didn't get to have that a year ago. We were basically capped at 7,000 a game last year, and it was 3,500 seats available for each school. This year, if you wanted to go and watch 11 hours of football, and that's often how it played out because of some of the length of those games, you were able to do that. And I thought going in that we would have mostly competitive games, and clearly we did. We had a couple of barn burners. I'm sure in Bob's idea, we had a couple of slobber knockers that were in there.
Oh, he did.
Only had really one blowout, and we kind of saw that one coming going into it, and we will get to that game in a matter of moments. So we are simply going to take them, one at a time. We'll start in 1A and work our way up. Adams Central jumped out to a 14-0 lead, but as was kind of the storyline for most of the weekend, just because you had an early lead didn't mean you won the game. Lutheran 34-28 against Adams Central. That game played out in terms of the competitive nature of it, the way that all of us felt it would. We thought the first game might have been the best game of the weekend, and I'm not sure that it wasn't, Bob.
I could not argue that fact at all. I mean, you think if you're an Adams Central fan from up this way that with Newlandswater taking that punt and going to the house, and then all of a sudden they turn right around and score again, now you're at 14-0. You're in the driver's seat, and you think you're going to get on Lutheran. They get a stop, but then they come down and score on you quick. This quarterback they got, you've talked about him, Montez Clay. Wow.
Yep.
This kid is exciting. 243 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day, but he just kept them. I don't want to say it. He kept Adams Central at arm's length once they got into the game and put some points on the board, because at halftime it's 21-14. And you're thinking, well, Adams Central, with the way they can control the clock, rushing the football. Oh, by the way, Lutheran stepped up in the second half. Adams Central did not have a great half of running the football. Lutheran puts 14 on the board in the third quarter. And then Adams Central puts, I believe, 7 on the board in the fourth. Lutheran puts on 6, and that's the way it ended. But give credit where credit's due. Lutheran played a great offensive ball game. All of a sudden, the defense came to play, I think, midway through that first quarter, Greg. And then it was an exciting Indiana High School championship football game in 1A.
If those two would like to play a best-of-7 series, I'm all for it. I'm pretty sure we get to Game 7. Again, those were the two best teams in 1A. And if you go by the Sagarin ratings, we had the top 2 teams in 4 of the 6 classes that faced each other in the state championship games. That was the case in 1A, 3A, 5A, and 6A. And again, to quote the Sagarin ratings, those 2 schools were in the top 40 in the state for any classification, and they played like it. Tip of the cap to both teams, and congratulations, Dave Passion Lutheran. They've been knocking on the door for a long time. They've been playing football for right at about 20 years at this point at Lutheran. In the last 10, they seemingly have been in contention for a regional, semi-state, or state championship, and they get that first championship. Congratulations. Now, moving on to 2A, the opening game of day number 2, scoreless at halftime between Andrean and Mater Dei. And Bob, not surprisingly, the team that had the best player on the field, which was Andrean and Drake Bowen, he kind of got rolling on both sides of the ball in half number 2, and that powered the Andrean 59ers to a 21-9 victory over Evansville Mater Dei.
I would have loved to have been in both locker rooms at halftime, to be honest with you. Because number one, the defensive coaches are excited. They're pumped. They got the shutout going. It's a chess match, right? And then come out in that second half and some points are put on the board. But my goodness, Bowen, 173 yards passing the football in 24 attempts with 3 touchdowns was kind of the name of the game for Andrean. But the 59ers have been a strong, strong team all year up in the Northwest, kind of away from everybody. You and I talk about them every week, it seemed like, but not many other people were bringing them into contention. But this is an outstanding football team. And then you look at modern day, the history they've got, Greg, coming up. This is going to be a great matchup between these two parochial schools.
Well, let's face it, in 2A, we have now accumulated a great amount of the small Catholic powers. Just the way that it works enrollment-wise right now, Andrean, Lures, Central Catholic, Cecina, Mater Dei are all in the same division. It's because a lot of those schools kind of have somewhere between, say, 400 and 500 in terms of enrollment. Central Catholic is smaller than that, but they are playing up due to the success factor and what they're able to do this year in terms of at least getting to Cecina in the regional round will likely keep them in the 2A classification for head coach Brian Ney going forward. So you've got a lot of similar schools. Then you add in the Eastbrooks, East Sides, Tiptons of the world. 2A is set up to be deep for a long time. And so it's not going to be like Andrean and Mater Dei are going to dominate this division. Nothing will be teed. But even though those schools are, 4-5 hours apart, Andrean and Mater Dei are very similar in terms of the background and the level of competition they play is really more of a 3A, 4A schedule that they play. You know, Andrean doesn't play, when they did play Maryville, they don't necessarily play most of the Duneland schools in football. Mater Dei, because of being in the SIAC, play the Wrights and Jaspers and Memorials and the largest Castle, the largest schools that Evansville has to offer. So they're battle tested. And a tip of the cap to my buddy Mike Gable, still looking for that second football state championship after winning one back in 2000. Mike doesn't look 69 years of age on that sideline. And obviously, Mike is one of the greatest coaches ever in the state of Indiana. I'm not talking about football. I'm talking about wrestling, and a guy that has won state championships in multiple sports. I always root for a Mike Gable coach team because I'm always rooting for Mike Gable. But great job by Chris Skinner and Andrean as the 59ers are once again football state champs. Now let's go to 3A. And most people in the state had heard about Brady Allen. For a lot of folks, this was their first chance to see him. Bob, I'll let you begin. Where do you start with the future Purdue Boilermaker?
Well, I'm here to tell you, 400 yards throwing the football. Get out of here. In a championship game, 5 touchdowns. I mean, throwing the football. We had over 700 yards of passing in that ball game. But this young man, Brady Allen, my goodness. Why the biggest thing that I think a lot of people don't look at with him, Greg, I know you do. You grab it quickly, but his composure back there to be able to get things going and having the composure to stay where he needs to stay or read and take his composure to the outside. This is exceptional. This is going to bode well for the Boilermakers, I'm telling you. But it really bode well for Gibson Southern in this championship game. And my goodness, they beat an outstanding rebuffed team. And to put 80 points on the board between the two schools, get out of here. But it's just so exciting.
I thought Brebeuf, the cap for them was about 30 points. That if it got above that, they couldn't keep pace. And credit to Gibson Southern, down 26-7, just kept having their gunslinger fire it down the field. And I was on the 5A game, which meant I got to watch the 3A game before it. And from being high atop Lucas Oil Stadium in the press box, the route combinations that Nick Hart had put together offensively for Gibson Southern, you're just seeing 4 guys fly down the field 20, 30, 40 yards, just knowing that Brebeuf can't cover all those guys and knowing that Allen can make every throw, in the route tree, however you want to describe what you do offensively. It was an offensive thing of beauty. And congratulations to Nick, who became the second head coach in state history to be a part of a father-son combination that had both won state championships because of joining Bud Wright and Kevin Wright. Then it became Nick Hart and John Hart. And then literally 24 hours later, Vince Leidy joined that group. His late father, John, as Mount Vernon beat Northridge 45-14. This was the one kind of blowout that I think a lot of us saw coming as we prepared for that game. The top 7 teams in the 4A bracket, from a computer ranking standpoint, were all in the southern half of the bracket. Northridge, it's a wonderful story that they made it. They had only been past the sectional round one time in over 50 years of playing high school football, but they were overwhelmed by Mount Vernon on Saturday afternoon. Baz, your thoughts on the Marauders being a first-time state champ?
Well, it's exciting. Mount Vernon, when you sit there and watch them over the years, literally, this has been a team that has got deep in the rounds, but had met somebody in that 4A that took them out. And this is a team that you kind of rooted for because they were there so, many times to try to get to that next game, to get to Lucas Oil. But what a great effort out there. You look at Sloniker, 3 TDs and threw for 235 yards, kind of led things for Mount Vernon, but they also run the football. And this is a well-diversified football team. I'll say a well-diversified football program. They did a great job against Northridge.
To your point, they beat Roncalli in the regional, who ended their season in the regional last year.
Yeah.
They go to Memorial and beat them in the semi-state, and that was the team that beat them, same exact location, Enloe Field at Bosse High School 2 years earlier. Good friend of mine is on the Mount Vernon staff, and 2 years ago, he talked about, he goes, I felt the kids from Memorial took our will to compete in the second half. That Memorial team led by Brock Combs, very dominant team physically. And Mount Vernon had 3 points in that semi-state game 2 years ago. Well, in the semi-state game last week, Mount Vernon shut out Memorial at their own building, beat them 14-0 in the second half of the game, was tied 28 all at halftime. And again, Northridge, great story. First-year head coach in Chad Epley. He's 27 years old. They returned some key pieces like their running back turned quarterback in Tag Gott, because they went through 4 different quarterbacks during the course of the year at Northridge. For Northridge, getting to the state final changes the trajectory of their athletic program. For Mount Vernon, as you so well put, Bob, they've been knocking on the door for a while. And Vince Leidy, again, his father, John, was the head coach at Castle when they won in 82 and 94. In 94, Vince was the starting quarterback and linebacker. And Vince Leidy becomes the first person in the 49-year history of the IHSAA football state tournament to be a mental attitude award winner and then come back and be a state championship winning football coach. Congratulations to Vince. Finally, let's get to our last 2 games, the 2 rematches from a year earlier. The Zionsville, and both games played out with the same team winning. Clearly, the Center Grove Westfield game was significantly closer. The Zionsville game doesn't reflect that on the scoreboard, but I thought in the tenor of the game it was. But in a complete lack of a surprise, Cathedral's your 5A champ and Center Grove is your 6A champ. Let's start with 5A. Baz, your thoughts on that game?
Well, you look at that game, and as you alluded to, it's really a 14-7 at halftime. So if you're Zionsville, you're feeling comfortable that you're in the ball game. You're hanging around this outstanding Cathedral team. And then you come out in the third quarter and Cathedral puts 10 points on the board, shuts you down. Now you start rethinking. Are you getting antsy? Are you getting quicker on things you want to do that you don't have to do because there's still 12 minutes to go in the ball game? But give a lot of credit to Cathedral because this is an outstanding ball team that you've talked about all year, Greg. You felt probably was the second best team in Indiana, and they come out with the championship of 34-14.
And let's put it in perspective. They played the 2 teams that played the 6A state championship game. They beat Westfield 14-0 first week of the season. They lost to Center Grove 21-6 in the last week of the regular season. Clearly, Westfield closed that gap during the course here with a chance they had to win against Center Grove late. But Cathedral, this is quite the run. And It is not guaranteed they'll be playing in 6A next year. Again, to explain to people, the success factor would not kick in until after next year, and there is no way that Cathedral would go up based on enrollment. There is a chance that the success factor gets recalibrated if they elect to do an enrollment reclassification for the next 2 years. They bypassed that because of the COVID pandemic last year. The IHSA has not decided what that is going to entail for the upcoming season. That decision gets made over the next few months and gets announced/enacted in April and May. So it is possible Cathedral is back in 5A. It is possible Zionsville is back in 5A. If they do elect to just recalibrate based on enrollment, Zionsville then would return to 6A. Cathedral would stay in 5. So again, we don't know what the permutations are. Cathedral suffers heavy graduation losses on the defensive side of the ball. 9 defensive starters graduate, led by Bryce Llewellyn and Jeff Utzinger and Hudson Miller. Kendrick Gilbert and Patrick Kendall up front return at 260 and 280. They graduate all 5 of their starting offensive linemen. They do bring back their quarterback in Danny O'Neill, just a sophomore. They do bring back their top receiver in Jerron Tibbs. Cathedral is always going to be good. Do know they lose a lot off of this team. I know that we're getting ready to hear a bell in the background, so I will warn our viewers and listeners. It's not the shot clock buzzer on today's show. It's close. But I do want to make sure we talk about that epic game in 6A. And you heard me say this all along. I thought Westfield would give Center Grove a much better game this year because of having played Center Grove last year, and because, frankly, I thought they got more battle-tested in the HCC on a week-in, week-out basis than Center Grove did in the MIC. There's said Bell. Baz, your thoughts on the way to 6A out?
Well, the thing I look at here is I think Westfield did what they needed to do, throw the football, to try to spread Center Grove out, because if you're going to try and run against them, forget about it, right? But if you can spread them out, it's going to give you some yardage. They still rushed for 126 yards, but they threw for 226 on the night to keep things, like I said, opened up in the middle or get to the outside. But give a lot of credit. You've talked about this team for a couple of years, really for 3 years, on how good Center Grove was going to be, not only year to year to year. It's just a rich tradition down there. But that defense they've got, Greg, is really unbelievable to watch. And they don't back down from anybody. And they wear you down. Well, a lot of people don't understand. They wear you down. They just don't contain you. They wear you down. Your will, your athletic, your processing, everything's worn down. By the end of the game, Westfield had to be worn out totally because they played that hard themselves.
We have, in the last 5 years in 6A, have had 4 dominant teams. Center Grove the last couple of years, although, again, the state championship game is much closer than the previous examples I'm about to cite.
Yes.
2017, Ben Davis. 2018, Warren Central. And last year's Center Grove team. We will not have that next year. Center Grove loses a lot. Caden Curry, James Schott, Carl Biddings, Green, the defensive tackle, Taven Jackson, Daniel Weems, Shane Bennett, their starting tight end, Max Burris, their 6'7" and 320-pound right tackle, Mitchell Evans, that was a 3-year starter, Curry was a 4-year starter. Again, Center Grove will be good. They'll always be good, but they frankly suffer even heavier graduation losses than Cathedral does. Cathedral, at least you can say, hey, quarterback is back, top receiver is back, couple of key pieces back defensively. Center Grove is going to look a lot different. And so 6A next year will be wide open. It's going to be very, and again, that was the case 2 years ago when Center Grove, with primarily sophomores, almost went from 4-5 to the state championship, lost in a close one to Carmel. We're going to have a similar year next year in 6A where there will not be a dominant team in the state's top classification. Baz, your final thoughts on the high school football season that was.
We're very blessed to have our fans back in the stands for the entire season. I mean, that is the biggest thing, talking to a lot of kids like you do, Greg. That's one of the things they say is to have the fans back supporting what they do. And That's one of the biggest things that stand out for me. And the class that I watched the coaches and players play throughout this season, it's been exceptional. We're very blessed to have the season back that we had, and next year can only be bigger and better in the great state of Indiana, because football in Indiana, Greg, is unbelievably getting better.
Yeah.
And coaching staffs around the great state, you're doing a fabulous job with these student athletes.
And I hear that from people that don't have any skin in the game but know football, and maybe at the professional level, and talk about how the game has changed in the last 2 to 3 decades in this state. And I'm not saying this to say it's not a basketball state, but folks, you can rest assured Indiana's a football state now too. And you see that on display. Quick take. Who's your Mr. Football? Caden Curry, Brady Allen, Hauser from Westfield, somebody else? Who you think?
I think to me, what I saw in the state championship game, Brady Allen kind of, to me, sealed the deal, put the wax around the edge. Now, I know everybody's talking about Curry and everybody, but boy, he was in the state championship game.
Right.
The cream does rise to the top.
I will liken this to 2018 when there was such a hubbub over Jack Kaiser winning over David Bell.
Well,
and I would tell anybody listening, hey, listen, the much bigger infraction there was George Karlaftis not being in the Final Four. Because I think Jack Kaiser's a young man that could be playing in the National Football League. He sees meaningful snaps at Notre Dame. Obviously, David Bell and George Karlaftis are both going to the NFL draft this spring because they went through senior day at Purdue on Saturday for the bucket game. Those are first and second round draft picks. Those kids are good too. I bring that up to say this. Brady Allen is a Mr. Football winner. So is Caden Curry. They just happen to be in the same classification. I do think it comes down to those two. I think the Hauser kid from Westfield will likely finish third. You've heard me, kind of stump for Caden Curry throughout the course of the year. Brady Allen is fantastic. And the performance he put on Friday was outstanding. And I think he can be an NFL player. I look at Caden Curry and I think of the minuscule amount of times that Alabama has recruited a player from the state of Indiana. Emil Ekiyor from Cathedral is on their roster now. Garrick Dieter, that played at South Bend, Washington, transferred there and won a national championship after playing at Bowling Green. Caden Curry is being recruited by Alabama and Oregon and Ohio State and Clemson and Indiana. And it's not a recruiting award, but I say that just to give you an idea into the regard that kid is going. And in my mind, he was the best player on the best team in the state each of the last 2 years. And for that reason, I would give my vote to Curry. But if Brady Allen wins, certainly not a travesty, and great for that kid, because I think we've got multiple deserving winners this year. With that, time for us to bid you a fond farewell. Baz and I are back in January to talk about basketball, even though he and I are spending way too much time on hardwood and bleachers and in gymnasiums over the course of the next few weeks. State Champs Indiana Extra Point, the basketball version, will tip off in early January. Be sure you join us then. Baz, you stay safe. You have a great holiday. I'll talk to you in the new year, okay?
You too, my friend. Thank you for everything.
You got it. That's our show this week. I want to thank Kevin behind the scenes. He's playing hurt for us today. Kevin, we hope you're feeling better. Hope you have a chance to rest coming up in the near future as well. Let's thank our friends at Lawrence Technological University. Recruit yourself at LTUathletics.com. For Bob Stambazze, this is Greg Rakestraw. Thank you for watching State Champs Indiana Extra Point.